Hey everybody, I'm Greg Bosson, CPA and president of QuickBooks Made Easy for Nonprofits. With this month's quick tip, this is for those of you using the desktop version of QuickBooks. And this tip is for July of 2022. Now let me tell you something. Usually the tips are, either intermediate, sometimes they're basic, but things you don't necessarily know. This tip is pretty darn advanced, all right? So hopefully this will answer more questions than it will raise, but it might raise a few. But this is a technique for handling, it's kind of hard to describe. This is a technique for how to handle if you have lots of little tiny in and out flow through fund type transactions. So the best way to explain it is to give you an example or two. So let's say you are a nonprofit organization that does missionary work, and you have lots of people and companies, nonprofits or whatever, that donate to individual missionaries. Maybe they're doing their own fundraising. And the money comes in by missionary, and then you pay the money out by missionary. And you need to know how much is going in and out and what's left for each missionary, okay? That's an example of little in and out flow through funds. Another example would be if you are taking care or your organization is flowing through funds on behalf of individual people. For instance, I have a few clients that have children that they care for that are in court custody. And those children are in group homes and the like. And money comes in because of a state contract for each individual kid, $126 a day or something like that. And then it goes out and it's paid out to group homes and stuff for each individual kid. And you need to know how much is coming in and going out and what the balance is by kid, okay? Another example would be if you're a house of worship and you have designated funds, the building fund and the children's fund and the worship fund, whatever. And you need to know what's coming in and what's going out, what the balance is per fund, okay? Now, this is an advanced class, okay? A little advanced tip. So what I'll see people do, because you got to track, it could be 150 kids or funds or missionaries, whatever. What I've seen people do is they use classes to track that in QuickBooks Desktop, which means you can get a little P&L for each class. Each class is a department. But the problem is that if you've got 150 kids or 150 missionaries or whatever, your report's really, really wide, very hard to read, and I don't want all those classes. You certainly can't use accounts for that either, all right? So I'm going to show you a way to track it using something, not customer job, but something else. Actually, the item list is what we're going to use, and it's really kind of cool, may blow your mind. So what we're going to do to start with is I'm going to go to just a standard P&L, just to give you an example, and I'm going to use missionaries as an example. So what we'll have here is, here's your regular P&L, and this nonprofit, they have money coming in and money going out for missionaries. So what they've done is they've created a little missionary funds in and missionary funds out. They put it on the P&L all the way at the bottom by using the other income type. Some organizations will use the balance sheet instead, which is perfectly fine. I've got to fix my cuffs here, which is perfectly fine. You can use balance sheet accounts. This feature is going to work regardless of whether you use balance sheet or P&L accounts. But the point that I'm trying to make is that, yeah, sure, this tells you the total, but not by person. So how do you track that? Well, again, you could use classes, which means your P&L by class would give you the information, but then there'd be hundreds of classes possibly. You could use accounts, but then your chart of accounts would be really, really long and nightmarish, and I don't want to use accounts and classes. So we're going to use something called items, all right? So now this is an advanced class, so you're going to have to bear with me here. So items, if you don't know what they are the lines that go on the sales forms. And what I mean by sales forms is either an invoice or a sales receipt, Here it is, sales receipt, which if you have the nonprofit edition in desktop, it might be called donation, but it's always going to be called sales receipt here in the menu bar. But anyway, these sales forms require you to use items, okay? So what this means is if you're going to use the technique that I'm about to teach, you're going to need to start entering your income, at least for these funds, not by just the make deposit window, but you're going to have to instead use the sales receipt form or the invoice form, which if you don't know how to do that, I have other training for it, but I'm going to assume that you do, okay? So anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the item list, and I'm just going to show you how this works. Here's your list, item list. And as you can see, what I've done, again, items are the lines that are on sales forms, and they point to accounts. And they can point to income accounts, and they can point to expense accounts, okay? So what I'm going to do is I've created an item. I created one item called missionary items, okay? And I made it an other charge item. There's different types of items. You want to make these unique fund in and outs. You want to make them other charge items. You'll see why in a few minutes. So I'm going to make them other charge items. And I call this one missionary items, but I'm never going to use it. So I'm going to point it to an income account I created called Do Not Use, so that if somebody accidentally uses it on a sales receipt, it'll pop up as a dollar amount with an account called Do Not Use, and I'll be like, okay, something wrong happened here. But anyway, so I'm really just using this as a header so that I can organize all of my individual missionaries underneath here. So then what I'm going to do is I've created one for Joyce, one for Naomi, one for Scotty, and now I'm going to create another one just so you see how this works. I'm going to go to the bottom left-hand button. I'm going to click New. Again, you're going to do this for each one of your missionaries or your kids or your funds or whatever. I've even seen people use it for fiscal sponsorships. If you sponsor a lot of different nonprofits, you could have one of these for each sponsee. But anyway, I'm going to make it an other charge, and then I'm going to name it. I want to be a missionary, so I'll put my name here. And now items point to income accounts. So on a sales receipt, instead of putting an income account like you would on the make deposit window, you put an item that points to an income account, and it makes it go to the same income account anyway. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it go to the missionary funds out. And then whenever I put it on a sales receipt, it's going to go to this income account. Okay. I'm also, you see this thing that says this item is used in assemblies or as a reimbursable charge. Who knows what the words mean. But anyway, click that box. And then I'm going to be able to also point it to an expense account. Okay? And I'll put this to missionary funds out. Okay? Oh, this should be missionary funds in. You probably figured that out. I was just testing you. All right. So what happens is when I use it on a sales receipt, it'll go to missionary funds in. I can also use these things. This is, people don't know this. You can also use these things on bills and checks. You see, there's an expense tab, but you can also use it here. There's an items tab. Okay. So what I'm going to do instead is after I check the box, this will go to missionary funds out. So whenever I use the item Greg Bosson, it'll go to missionary funds in on my P&L. And whenever I use the item Greg Bosson on a check or a bill, it'll go to missionary funds out. It's going to be perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and make this a sub-item of my missionary items. And this is just more of an organizational thing. That's why I did that. So that now they're kind of all together here, which is kind of cool. And now I'm going to show you how to enter transactions. So we'll do a sales receipt. Again, this is advanced. I'm assuming you know how to do a sales receipt, but I just kind of want to give you some kind of go through the process here. So let's say Ava Buckner gave money. A lot of times the missionaries are kind of raising the money themselves, but I'm going to pick Greg Bosson. And I was able to get Ava to give me $1,000. Don't ask me what I did to make her give me that money. And then, since I'm not using classes to track the missionaries, now I can use the classes like I'm supposed to. This was for, we'll say the classes, this is program admin and fundraising. So this is the Aware campaign. And because I picked Greg Bosson on a sales receipt, what it does is it looks to the item list, it looks at Greg Bosson and it says, yeah, this goes to missionary funds in. So that's what it's going to do when I save that transaction. Okay, so let's go ahead and save that. And then as money goes back out, let me go ahead and go to money back out here. I'm going to write a check. It'll work for bills. It'll work for credit card charges, whatever. Just write a check. And sometimes you're paying money directly to the person, or sometimes you're just paying money on behalf of the person. We'll say we're paying directly to the person. If this was a child, you might be paying the money to a group home for them or something like that. I'm going to go ahead and click Quick Add. And all right, so then we'll say I asked for $250. I'm down in some other country, so that's what they sent me. But I'm going to use my item. I'm not going to use the expense. I'm going to use the item, Greg Bosson, $250. And I'm free to use the class for the AWARE campaign. I don't have 50 million classes anymore. Now, one thing that's really important with the desktop, in order to get the report the way that I'm going to show you, it's very important that you put something in the customer job field, okay? Don't worry about why. So I created a customer called missionary. That's what I'm going to do, okay? But it's just, this has to have something in it in order for you to get the report that you need, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and save and close this. Now, I am done. Click out of here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a report. Now, first of all, if you look here, you'll see here is missionary funds in, missionary funds out, okay? If I double-click on missionary funds in, I see the transactions. Now, I need to change the date range here. I'm going to change the date range, and I'm going to make it all dates, all right? Because if you want to get a report for your missionary in and out or whatever your funds are, they usually bleed between years. So I'm going to just change the date range of the P&L to all dates. You'll see why in a minute. Okay, so basically it's telling me here, this is all the money I've gotten in and all the money I've gotten out from the beginning of time for my missionaries. But again, it's not giving it to you by person. Now I'm going to build the report to give it to you by person, okay? So you build this report once, you memorize it, you're good to go. So I'm going to go to reports. This is going to blow your mind. I'm going to go to jobs, time, and mileage, and I'm going to go to an item profitability report, all right? An item profitability report. So what this is going to do, I'm going to go ahead and click it, is it's going to give me the ins and outs for every single one of my missionaries. How much I've gotten in, how much I've paid out, and what the balance is at any given point in time, okay? And you can see that I've got, what, 6702 in since the beginning of time, minus 1020. The balance is 5682. If I go to my P&L that I made from the beginning of time, that should be, yep, there it is, 5682. So see, now I've got a nice little clean P&L. I don't have 50 million classes. And then I've got a nice little report here, an item profitability report. Now, the other thing I'd want to do, though, is I want to memorize this report. But before I memorize it, I want to filter it because I really only need missionary items. I don't need anything else. Fortunately, the other charges I saved, other charge, which is a type, that's what I used for all of my missionary items, okay? And I didn't use it for anything else. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click Customize, I'm going to click Filter, and I'm going to go down to Items, and I'm going to filter it just to include my other charge items, which for me, I've decided are only going to be the items that related to missionaries. So now I've got something that's beautiful. I'm going to customize it again, add a header footer. I'm going to call it my missionary report. And this is, of course, all of your missionaries, okay? And then I'm going to memorize it like that. Now, there's already one in here, so anyway, I'll just exit out of here. But I'll show you where you go to get to your memorized reports. You go to Reports, Memorize Report. Here's my missionary report right here, okay? Click it, it pops up. There it is. Okay. And if I want to get a report just on a specific person, I'll double click on myself and I'll see what came in and went out, and I can send them the reports that they need. Okay. So just going back again, I just want to make sure you understand when you create these items, each one of these, Greg, Joyce, Naomi, Scotty, each one of these is pointed to the same missionary out and missionary in. Okay. That way I can only need 2 accounts, but I got hundreds potentially of items that are pointed to those 2 accounts, missionary out and missionary in. Okay. So I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. I thought that was really fun. Isn't that a cool trick? Hopefully that made sense. Sorry this has been such a long video, but what can I say? I'll catch you later.